Nullhocheins, der Musik- und Kulturbusiness-Podcast.
Again, I am joined by Desmond Myers. This is the second part of the talk we had about being an artist in these trying times, about the joys and woes of social media and the myriads of benefits of self-producing. And here we go, back to a conversation in 3, 2, 1, and go. There's a lot of whining going on out there that the music business is so complicated and it's so hard and blah, blah, blah. And it's hard. But even in the good old days, in the 80s, 90s, where there was still a lot of money in the business, there were just, guys in suits who handled that for you. Nowadays, it's you. And I think, that is a lot of responsibility, of course, that makes things for the creators more difficult because you have so many things that you have to think about. If you look at it from this perspective, like I only want to do music and now I have to do reels. But going back to what we talked about before about Paris, about having a vision.
Yeah.
If you have a vision, if you know what you want to put out there, like visually, like what it has to sound like, what you actually want to say, not only in those lyrics, but as an artist, what do you have to say? If you got that figured out, the creation of the content is easier. Yeah. And you actually, I think for me, that is the big democracy about the whole thing, that suddenly everybody has to have a vision. Yeah. And that separates pretty hard the people who just, love to play guitar, but find it difficult in this day and age to get an audience. Yeah. And those people who have a vision, not that I have one, I'm getting more and more of that. But I see the current state of the internet and the artist as a pretty hopeful space, actually.
I couldn't agree more. I think with like talking about reels and community and stuff like that, I think there's two things that I try to remember, and I had to be very patient this year in a way that I wasn't anticipating. So like I put out a record last October, and it was a dream come true. We had a sold out release show at a club in Paris it's like a 500 cap club. It's a really cool club called Nullhocheins. I couldn't believe it. Like we went on tour. We opened for a huge French band called Feu Chatterton. It was great, and I was like, "This is it, baby! We're just going to the top. Let's go!" And we got back to the States. I was like, "All right, let's bring this to the States." I booked us a little tour in the States. I had my booking agent kind of help work with all that, and my booking agent was like, "Hey guys, I need you to make another record." We did like 15 dates for this album. And I was like, what? Wait, we already spent all the money making the record. We need to tour now, right? We need to tour and like make all that money back. She's like, dude, you're an indie band. She's like, you're like, no one knows who the fuck you are. Like, you gotta get on the road and you gotta put more music out. Like you gotta figure out, it's kind of like, you gotta figure out something. She didn't say it like that, but like, it's pretty much the truth. And so it was like, I kind of thought, I let myself get comfortable thinking like, well, I've got a label, I've got a booking agent, I've got this whole thing. And I had to be patient. I spent a lot of 2022 accepting the come down from the high. Because those 15 gigs were cool, man. We had people showing up all over France. It was awesome. The US tour was cool. The band sounded great. And it just got more and more complicated after that because the audience wasn't big enough. And so going back to like reels and talking about like, the optimism for the creator community, what I had to realize was like this kind of fantasy that I had of like being signed and being on a roster and being on a booking agent and all this kind of stuff is a little bit outdated. It doesn't mean that it can come to you when you have built something up. It can really be obviously, there's artists who are playing 1,500 and 20,000 cap rooms or whatever. Jesus, they're not booking those. They're not sending the emails, right? You have to have a community. You have to have a following. And with reels and stuff, I got into I got into trying to make those because before I really was guilty of the. I heard a friend use this term, the post your boast.
Come again.
Do you know this?
No.
Post your boast. Did you know what the word boast is?
Yeah.
To boast, to brag.
Yeah.
That was what they called Instagram. So it's like posting your boast. So it was like just showing the highlights.
I see. Showing off.
And I think that's how a lot of artists still use Instagram. They're like, hey, I've got a show. I've got a sexy photo. I've got this. I've got a song. And that's like not engaging.
I noticed that about you because what I saw, I'm not that active on Instagram, like passively, because I'm so I'm so active on it, like putting stuff up there, that I don't spend too much time watching what other people do.
Sure,
but
that's very smart, by the way.
It's healthy.
It is.
But what I saw was that you were talking about, like, you were asking questions. You were talking about everyday stuff as an artist. You were like, okay, how should I approach this song? I want to do it this way. Do you have anything for me? Like, pretty open stuff. That is, if that is what you mean, then I get it. It was not, okay, guys, I have like this setup. The string players are going to start now, and here is the big production. It's more like, okay, this is a work in progress. Talk to me. And that's interesting, I think. And that's a way to grow a communication, a basis, an audience. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I intend to get back to that. Like I said, I was on a roll with that, and there's been some. I've had to really realize this year. Oh, okay. Everything you thought that was going to happen is not going to happen. And I think, like, for any artist that's listening, sorry, my ring light just fell on my desk. For any artist that's listening, that's okay. If you're going through that right now, if you're in between releases and your manager just quit, or you're, whatever's going on, if you were on a high and or you put out a song and it got in playlists and then your next song fucking tanked, it's okay. Like, I think, like, it's really important to keep going. And you know what? I don't know if you get if you're still on relations with this person, but Matthias Kellner said something to me way, way, way long ago. And he was just like, in his typical, like, kind of way, he was like, yeah, the people who succeed are the people who stick around. That was more or less what he said. Yep. And I remember hearing that, like, wow, that's really cool. And so yeah, I think, like, engaging, think about it like talking. If you go to have dinner with, like, if you and I went to have a drink and all I did was tell you about how great my life is, you'd be like, sure, fuck that guy. He's so annoying to talk to. He's so boring, But if you like, how great is it, this conversation, to go out and be like, actually stuff hasn't been that great, and I'm making it work. And here's how I'm making it work. How are you making it work? How's your life? I think that's the way that I'm trying to see social media now. It took some humbling for me to get there. I'm not perfect at it, but yeah, that's the way I'm trying. I think this entitled feeling of, like, I should just put out music and people should love me. We have to realize as artists that's a very big ask for people.
That is one thing, especially if you're if you're competing for the same screen time as cats on YouTube, and Netflix. Back in the day, back in the good old days, the other bands in your city or in your country were the competition. Now it's screen time. Anything that's interesting. It's especially podcasts, long format, as they call it. I'm so with you on that, because I had the same experience, like, at least twice in my life, and one of them was 2 years ago, where I thought, okay, I gave it my all. I put everything I have in it, money, energy, brain, creativity, everything I have to say is in this, and it sort of just evaporated. And now what? And then Corona came along. That was my second time 2 years ago. We're gonna circle around to the first time. I got one question for you. Second time it happened that I sort of almost gave up. That was in the beginning of Corona, because it took about 5 days that everything I had planned for that year fell apart. Like, all the shows, all the productions, everything just went away. And I suddenly had a lot of time in my hands, and I had a big think. And what happened was that I I started writing again in a way that I never wrote before, because there was no deadline for which this has to be done, because I need to do the next record. I need to rehearse this for the gig. I need to do this setup thing, blah, blah, blah. Because it's actually rolling, the whole thing. No, it's stopped to a dead halt. And I was wondering, okay, so why should I sit down here with my guitar and fool around? Because there is no record. I am not working on a record right now. How could I? And I spent weeks and months writing and playing and forgetting the world out there. Going back to like 17-year-old Johannes playing guitar.
That's awesome.
To the core of what it actually meant for me, to the core of what I actually wanted to do. And that is sustainable. That is the point.
Yeah.
What is not sustainable is putting out a highly produced record every year with 3 videos that are like, 10K each. That is not sustainable unless you are very, very famous.
Yeah.
What is sustainable is that I sit here in my studio and do music. Just the big shift in my head was not everything I do here has to lead to something. Not all of this has to be actually productive. It is okay if I spend time here instead of investing time. You know what I mean? Like this.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And that made it so much easier for me. Like it made it so much lighter. Everything that I do musically these days, there's so much joy in it and so little weight. Because I lost all expectations 2 years ago. I just, in a very, very, very good way, with a big smile on my face, I gave up. And that made everything so much easier. Because all those expectations, you carry them around with you. You go into a gig, and if it's not sold out, but it's full, it's great. But if it's not even full, if there's just 15 people showing up, and you allow yourself to feel like a failure because it did not translate into full audience, what you did. So it must be not good enough for whatever. No, it's much too complicated. It doesn't work like that. You can have plans all day. And if they work out, doesn't necessarily say anything about the worth of you as an artist or of the things that you do. And I got, I cut ties with all of that 2 years ago in my last big sort of crisis. And I'm so thankful for that. But you need to make it sustainable. You need to find a way that you can either go on with this forever or find without it costing you like a leg. Or you need to find a way to get money into the business that you can afford working on the level that you want to work at, which is interesting because I still do everything I do alone. And you found a way with this investment thing you just said, Les. Wow. It sounds amazing, man. It's great.
Well, so I think the other thing is, I'm happy for you that have you ever read the book The Dip? Okay, so I'll have to link that too. I haven't fully read it, but it's like a 70-page book, and it's a lot of people read this book when they're thinking about quitting something, and talks about how quitting can actually help you achieve your goals. It's this ironic sort of thing.
I get that.
Yeah, there's usually something that needs to be shed in order for growth, right? It's like it's almost like when you prune a plant, right? Yeah. Like when you prune a tomato plant or something, it needs there's some baggage, that needs to be pruned. On the one thing I will say though is like when you talk about making it sustainable, I'm still figuring all this out. I think you have to, like, making this last record was the first time I invested a lot of money into it.
Same here. Yep.
And it panned out better than anything. Like there's a delicate balance, and I think that every business has to assess like how much, like you said, like, okay, if making 3 music videos at 10K each per year is unsustainable, then we can't do that. But like, is our music videos what you need? Is that what you need? Like, do you need, what do you actually need? Like, and that's a hard question for a lot of artists to answer, because that's what business people have to answer all the time. They have to go to shareholders. They have to go to these different people, and sorry to talk about shareholders, but it's a business, right? Like if you go to these people and say, hey, here's how we're investing money this year. And their shareholders have to say, why the hell are you doing that? and they have to tell them why the hell they're doing that. Otherwise, their shareholders are gonna pull out and put them on the chopping block. And so it's a delicate balance. The other thing is, one thing that slicing pie has taught me is, again, if you're taking out a loan, or if you're working with a record label, you are going to take out a loan to go to work. You are going to make something. You are going to be loading in and out. You're going to be going to a gig. You're going to be traveling. There's going to be travel expenses. Too often, we're too ambitious and we don't see how much we're working. And you have to make sure that anything you do, and this is especially important if you're involving other people, I think, in your music, you have to say, hey, this work that I'm doing, it's work and it needs to be accounted for. And the industry for far too long has gotten away with sending an artist out to do work while they're collecting debt. Like it's this horrible scenario where they're just completely accumulating the revenue from something and then sending the artist out to figure out how to make it work.
Which is why I think it's a great thing that all of that, well, most of that part of the industry just, crashed. And it's changing. And we have ways of working around that. There's like thousands of people out there, musicians who are, deemed worthy musicians who never went out on the road.
Yeah.
That's just true. Sitting in their homes. They built their audience over the last 2 years, sitting at home playing guitar like crazy. Yeah. And that's okay. That can be enough. And that bypasses the whole other crap we just talked about, the business people outside who just don't see the work that you do, because you can make the work you do visible, which is one of the reasons why I'm so optimistic about all of this. Circling back to my first crisis. This is not about me today, but we were just talking about it. Like the first time that I tried to quit or thought about quitting, that was actually when we met. I was at the tail end of a career of a band that I was playing in, and we had been going around for 6 or 7 years or something, and we were on the radio. We were doing lots of shows, like 100 to 120 shows a year,
and all the time.
It was relentless. We put out a record every single year, and we played shows like crazy and TV and radio and whatnot. So that tanked and stopped. And that was the first time that I had to figure out, okay, do I actually want to do this? Or is this just me clinging on to a naive dream of 17-year-old Johannes that just wasn't thought through? And I also, back then, that's when I decided, okay, I will keep doing this, but I will do it alone. In the sense that, not that I'm not talking to people, but that I will not join another band and build up the band for another songwriter or other people. I'm just going to start my own thing, and I'm going to invest all my time and energy into that. And if I work with other people, they work for me, and I will work with people, but I will not work for other people with my band, with my project any longer. And that changed everything, which is why the whole DIY thing in music is that's sort of a quasi-religious thing for me, that this self-empowerment, how much you can actually do, which is one of the other questions that I wanted to come around to, that I see you producing a lot of your own stuff now. Is that true?
Yeah.
Pre-produce, or where are you at that?
So one of the biggest things that one of the coolest things that I picked up over the past, I guess, 4 years was I joined a songwriter challenge group. So this was started off with a lot of guys based in New York City, and they had a group called Puke Ellington. And the idea was every Thursday by midnight, you had to upload a new song to a private SoundCloud, and you had to that had to be a song. And those guys were good.
Every Thursday, like every week.
Every week, and they were good. Ooh. They were also brutal. So if you missed a week, they weren't brutal and critique each other. They were very supportive, and it was always like, dude, you sound great, man. Like that was like a lot of the comments, right? But it was brutal in the sense of if you miss a week, you're out. You don't have access to the SoundCloud anymore.
Whoa.
Yeah, like one guy's grandma like passed, and he was like, "Guys, it's been a rough week." And they were like, "I'm sorry, you should have made a voice memo like in the bathroom or something." It doesn't paint them in the best light. They didn't. No. The idea is to accountability, right? And so you were asking about producing. So I learned how to produce. I had like Logic and stuff when I was in Regensburg. Mm-hmm. This would have been like Logic 9. But I switched to Ableton when I was in Paris because I had a really close friend who's actually German, who was into Ableton. He taught me Ableton while I was in Paris. Mm-hmm. And I remember I had like a steady gig in Paris that I could like go. I worked at a cabaret, so I could go at night. The show was from like 8:30 to like 9:45. And so it was like a really regular thing and I was touring with a band. So anyway, I had like a lot of time where I could just be like, on the weekends I was touring, and then on the evenings I had this really steady gig. So I could finally I was like, I'm going to stay home and make music all day. And that was how I learned how to produce. And also weirdly, I learned how to produce being on tour with another band because I didn't want to, I was working on someone else's music so much. I felt this urge to make my own music even more. So anyway, I I just say all that because when we knew each other, I wasn't really producing, and now I'm pretty big into producing. And that songwriter challenge has been the absolute secret. So that got me, I had a lot of gaps in my knowledge when I was producing in Paris. I wasn't writing super regularly. And when I started, I think I started right at the beginning of end of 2018, beginning of 2019. And I continued until the birth of my son. And then I started my own group. But I wrote every week for, on close to 3 years. And that taught me to be efficient, and that taught me to really write. So I know I'm pretty fast now, thanks to that exercise. But I also, I just recognize it's like my next record, I'm working with a producer in Nashville, and I've sent him stems. Like I track the vocals here. I've got like a treated room. I've got like a pretty good, I've got like some outboard gear and stuff. But I recognize I need a producer just to have a second set of ears. Like I send them stems and they're like, dude, this is like almost done. And I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of a mess, right? And they're like, yeah, we could do something. It sounds silly, but I recognize like I need another set. There's a certain point where I need another set of ears.
That doesn't sound silly at all, because that's usually, even for most people who self-produce, at the very end, you send your stuff away to mastering. And if you ask any of those guys, it's just just the same set of words, a second set of ears. That's what they need to be, because you can go down your tunnels producing all night long, and you can lose perspective on that. I'd say even, to me, producing is part, and mixing is part of songwriting. It's one thing, because if you're just a dude playing guitar, then there's not much producing going on. But as soon as you start like dinging around in the synth, some analog stuff, the sound that you made, the texture of it is so much part of what the music is beyond the notes. Yeah. That is it. If someone else came along, took the same, I don't know, MIDI and put it into the wrong synth sound, the song would not work. Yeah. So that is part of the arrangement and the production and the songwriting, all of that. And the more you know about that, I think it makes you a better songwriter, actually.
Oh yeah, it makes you, it's funny, I had a friend write me, a really close friend. He's like, I think I want to start getting into recording myself. He's like, what do you think? Should I like just pay someone to do it, or should I get into it? And I said, I think you should do both. Like, I'm sorry. Bad.
Perfect advice.
I was like, I'm glad you agree. I was like, I feel kind of bad, but I was like, because I remember I made a record. I don't think you've ever heard this record. I made a record when I was 16, and I went to a pretty serious studio. No. Do you have it? There's two actually. Wait, there may be.
The one I'm looking for, the one with the werewolf Desmond.
Okay, that one's bearable. It's pretty bad.
No, I love it.
I still love it. There's an even worse one.
Okay.
I made one before that. I may have been 15. And my like we met this producer, and my mom met this guy, and she was like, Des, like you should go record at the studio, this guy's studio. He had like a pretty like super studio. I don't mean to get on a tangent, but we're talking about like self-producing and stuff. And the thing is, like, I went to, it wasn't anything crazy, but they had like a live room, you know, stuff. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know. They would ask me like, how do you think the bass should be? And I was like, dude, I don't know. I'm 15. Yeah. Like you play the, and I was like, and I could play, you know, the root notes. And I remember I started to try to do a bass take, and they were like, stopped the take and they're like, you don't just play root notes, guitar player. Like, you know, like that's not how you play bass. And, you know, like, and, I think that if you don't self-produce, you're gonna, if you pay someone else to do your record, and I know this from people who have more years on than me, people who have just always had someone else make their records. They're still, it's not for everybody, right? There's some people I'm sure like I think Solange, Beyonce's sister, she's got this crazy way of like communicating with her producer, and they stand in the control room and she's like just on a SM58 and they're just like vibing. And you know, you don't have to be like a gearhead. You don't have to know like what an 1176 is or a 1073. You don't have to know all that jingo. That jingo's not the word. Lingo. You don't have to know all that lingo, but like I think if you're asking the question whether or not you should produce yourself, you should try, because it's so much fun. It's so worth it. You're going to move so much faster. And you're also going to sound, no matter what you do, no matter what mic you sing through, you're going to sound like you. And you're going to come up with some stuff. Like there's stuff on my last album that we just took the demo. There's so like my biggest song on that record, Playing with Fire, that was the demo. That was a demo vocal. It's a cheap,
you mean
80
3 million plays on Spotify song is the vocals are a demo.
We tried recutting that. So I have the mic here. The mic is barely functioning. The mic that I recorded that on, my son plays with, and he's broken the shock mount on it and all this stuff. It's I bought it from, you know who I bought it from? I bought it from Sebastian Kretz.
Okay.
Sebastian Kretz.
Yeah.
I bought it from him back in the day. I bought it for 80 euros. This is a Studio Project C1. If you know that mic, it's actually not bad. It's like a FET U87 clone, but cheap.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I did that direct into a Focusrite interface in a closet. And the room sounded horrible. The closet sounded horrible. We kept trying to recut it. The engineer was pulling his hair out. He's like, this other vocal take that you've done has no vibe. We sang into a Chandler Charter Oak, into a Chandler preamp. You know, we're talking like a $10,000 vocal chain.
Yep.
And the vibe wasn't there. So that's the other encouraging thing. Excuse me. If you start recording yourself, you're gonna make stuff. Don't be intimidated by the gear. Don't be intimidated. Like, don't let anything stop you, because you're like, whatever you can make work. If you got a snowball mic, if you got your iPhone headphones, that could have a vibe, and your music. You know what the important thing is? Your musical intuition is going to tell you what is right. You may not know how to work a compressor, but you know how to, you like music, you know how to make music. So you're going to make it sound the way you want it to sound.
You just mentioned two very important things, I guess. One of them is that if you do record yourself, you're getting so much better at like differentiating between a take that is okay and one where you actually nailed it.
Yeah.
You get so much better at it, because if you don't start that, you always have to rely on somebody else telling you that was good, that didn't. Do that again, do it again, try something more nasal or whatever. But you learn that for yourself if you self-produce. You learn it even faster if you produce that with somebody who coaches you, who is good, and you pay attention to what he is saying. So that experience helps you. You might need some experience with somebody who records you in order for you to be able to do it on your own. But the other thing is, soon as you can do that, you have the opportunity to record something at 11 p.m. at home, when you just wrote it, when you actually feel it. You dry the tears because it gets to you so hard and you really, really feel it. It just exploded into your head and you put it in there. And that is something different than like 8 months later in summer, standing there and somebody says, okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Whatever you produce in that moment is, and it doesn't matter if it's an SM58, you know, it doesn't matter if it crackles. A good take is so much, is something that is so damn worthy. Worthy is not the word. It's the actual point. The good take is the point, not the technical stuff. Nobody whistles a compressor. You know?
Yeah.
All that gear. It's you can get lost in that. It's not important. It's really not important. I have to get back to another thing that I personally want to know, but that might be interesting for people out there. Circling back again to that band that I was playing with, Kellner, you mentioned him before, who gave you that advice about carrying on. The two of us met at one of the gigs that we played in Munich, and you needed to ride back home to Regensburg.
Yes.
And you were sort of fresh off the boat, and you just said, hey guys, könnt ihr mich mitnehmen nach die Regensburg? And we said, sure, man, come on in. You got into a car. Yeah. You got into a car. We were going home from the gig anyway, and we were talking. And there was you know, the 19-year-old kid, fresh from high school.
Oh my God. I remember why. I remember why. Okay. Yeah.
Telling us that you basically just came to Europe because you want to be a musician over here. And there is me and Matthias in the front seats, like those guys 10 years older than you, who have been through the high. And it wasn't declining then already, but we had been in the business like 10 years longer than you at that point in Europe, where you went to make it work. And both of us were thinking, dude, you just came here to... Okay, let's see. Next day you played a show in Regensburg in the art club. It's the first time I saw you. Until then, I thought to myself, that was a nice guy, but that is some naive romantic. We'll see. We'll see. You got up on stage. You played for, I think it was 4 hours straight. You blew the roof off. You didn't stop. People were going crazy. It was.
Are you serious?
Yes. And yeah, you invited me. You said, "Come, I'm going to play tomorrow." And I think, yeah, okay, I'm going to watch you. And there I was standing and thinking to myself, okay, because I thought, it's another 19-year-old kid who can play guitar a little and wants to make it. But there was you, like fully finished musician rocking the crowd. That was so impressive what you did then. And you did covers, you did your own material, and what you already did back then, and that is where the question is that I'm trying to get in my long-winded way. You also rapped a lot.
Yeah.
And that was something that you were heavily into when you were in Germany, at least.
Yeah, I was.
I didn't follow how that was, how long that lasted in France, but as far as I see it, that is something that you don't do that much anymore, or even you just stop doing it on the records.
Yeah, no, that's funny. Yeah, so I did do that because you have to understand, like, for me growing up in where I grew up, all I heard was 60s and 70s rock and country, like almost exclusively. And the things that I discovered kind of on my own was like jazz, a little, and like not even really cool jazz, but like swing, you know, like but great stuff, like standards, you know, whatever. But not like Coltrane, you know what I'm saying? And was in hip hop. And I got really lucky. I got turned on to Mos Def, was the guy that I was listening to a lot. But when I was in Germany, that led me onto the Roots. He Who Shall Not Be Named anymore, Mr. Kanye, Mr. Kanye West was a big, you know, his music was and is a big influence on me. But he's lost the plot. But and I just wanted to have something that wasn't everybody that around me loved, and it still feels like this to an extent. Like everybody around me loved this retro thing. This like the 60s were great, and now and there was a lot of that attitude, back in that era of like modern music sucks. Like back in the day, that was the real music. And I remember like I had an iPod and I was listening to everything. I was listening to Coldplay and John Mayer, and I was listening to hardcore that my friends were listening to. And the thing that really opened my ears and turned me on was listening to hip hop, the Cool Kids. I was like, man, I love the Beatles. I love Pink Floyd, but this is great. Like people don't know what I just remember feeling like this is music that people don't understand how good this is. And it was kind of naive. And I really don't think that I think I can unequivocally say that is not in the cards for me to be a rapper. It's not something I identify with anymore. Mm-hmm. And I struggle with like,
you were great as a rapper.
I was okay. I was okay. Well, what I liked about rapping was you could say so much.
Yes.
You could say so much more than you could with a melody. There's a limited amount. And now I've learned to see it backwards and actually saying less, you can say more. True. I've actually learned, that's a feature, not a bug of, I thought, yes. You know what I mean? That is the point of song. When I learned that, I was like, okay, I'm done rapping, because I thought like, yeah, but people don't understand. I have all this stuff I want to say, and I've only got 8 bars, and those can only, I can only sing like 16. I can't sing 16th notes for 8 bars to put all the words that I want to say into it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Whoa. Yeah, and so when I realized, I started listening to Joni Mitchell, started listening to, and then, honestly, like, sorry to keep going back, but like John Lennon and like those guys, it's like, oh, they're like the less words you say, that's actually the point of songwriting. So yeah, I definitely don't do that anymore. But it was something I was into. It was me trying to break away from this. I never wanted to have a retro thing. I never wanted to be a blue, because there is a timeline where I stayed in North Carolina, and I was a little bit this guy where I was the guitar wonder kid, the blues guitar wonder kid, and it's very,
hang on 1 second. Okay, so we just had to take a little break because one of my kids just walked through the picture and I don't want to see them online. So we're talking about the change that you made in making music, and that was necessary for you. Also, the experimentation was necessary for you to find your voice.
Yeah.
I made the exact same. I also changed the way that I write, in that I don't aim for higher notes anymore. I sing a lot lower these days because I wanted to have the energy. I wanted to have the punch. And I only got there with screaming it up here. But these days I try to sing stuff that's down here that has the same punch, but just in the words. There's some sentences that like, you could whisper them and it would be a great chorus.
Your lyrics are amazing. I've been listening to the stuff you've been putting out, and I love the Elon Musk song. It just gets more and more relevant every single fucking day.
I know.
But you have a really, really passionate. I'm sorry. I just want to say one thing. I've developed a bit of a crush, a man crush on someone, and I'm curious if we're both crushing on this person, because I realized you remind me of him, and he's like become my new favorite. Danny Elfman. Are you a Danny Elfman? Are you on the Danny Elfman fan train at all?
I so am. I have yes.
He is the fucking man.
I started studying his stuff with the Batman score, and I really got into that. And I mean, come on. I play Danny Elfman almost every day with my kid on the piano because he's so in love with Harry Potter.
Yes.
And that theme is by Danny Elfman too, isn't it?
No, that's John Williams, but it sounds like Danny Elfman.
That is John Williams.
Yeah,
Seriously.
that was John Williams. Yeah.
I was wrong. I thought it was Danny Elfman.
No, it's fine.
Anyway, love him. Everything but also his older stuff. The Oingo Boingo, whatever. This
Oingo
dude,
Boingo, yeah, he's
dude.
amazing. He has the best story, the best career. Have you listened to podcasts with him by chance?
Not yet. Oh,
probably the best podcast guest, dude. You should listen to some Danny Elfman podcast. He is so cool.
I need more links. Send me the links afterwards. I'm going to put them in the show notes.
But you have a thing, like you have a Danny Elfman thing.
Yes. How can you not?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. How can you not have a Danny Elfman thing?
Yeah.
Desmond, we have to wrap it up because we have to split this talk into 2 parts, and your kids are coming home.
Yeah.
Traditionally, one of the last questions that I ask is, I have to skip some, but I think we have to talk again.
I think so.
What is, and that is like quick answers. What is the most fun part of doing music?
I think the most fun part is the feeling when the song is done and you get to, so I am tantric with bass lines. I hold off because they're my favorite part. And when I know the song is working and I get to throw on my bass, I'm not a great bass player, but when I get to write the bass line, that's when I know a song is really working. And when you play the bass line and it adds that secret sauce that's been missing, that just feels, it's kind of tied with also when the song is done and you played it in your car. That's also a really good feeling, but that can also be disheartening too. So,
okay, but totally with you on that. And interesting to point out that you didn't say like playing live or something. You went to the writing part of it, as do I. I love playing live. But next question: what is the hardest part?
The hardest part is knowing what to do. Knowing
Back
what to do vision. Every day. Every day. So like you can have all the will, you can be industrious, you work up. I wake up, I get my kids' stuff to daycare. I sit down in my office and I say, I am going to make shit happen today.
Yes.
It's 8:30 in the morning, got my coffee and I'm like, let's take over the world. And then I'm like, what do I do? Do I focus on social media? Do I write a song? Do I send emails? Knowing what to do? Mm-hmm. That's hard.
Final question. What is the best piece of music-related advice that you can share with us that you got in this life?
I have to go back to the Matthias Kellner one where he said, and it's so funny. I'm not just saying that because I'm on your podcast. Like I would say that elsewhere. He said, the people who it's all about just staying around and sticking around. And I wish I could remember how he said it because he definitely said it in Bavarian.
Yeah, he said, Weitermachen.
Weitermachen. Yeah. Oh my God.
Also, Desmond, wenn du mich fragst, dann musst einfach weitermachen. Which is to say...
Oh my God, that's exactly what he said.
I know. Because we've been talking about that for years. Every gig we played, me and Matthias were always sharing cars and we were talking all night long. And that was something that we really share, this spirit of carrying on. Just carrying on. And that is I think that's a great point to end this conversation with all the stuff that I heard from you. That was I wanted to know it as a person, but I also think that for the listeners out there, this is super duper interesting. And this optimistic view on music is something that you and me, we have to do it anyway. We are gonna do it. I tried quitting it and I came back to it like an addict, All you have to do is you have to find a way to make it carry on-able, to make it sustainable. So you can stay in there, like financially, mental health, whatever, energy, time. And that is the job, to make it possible for you to make music. And I think as long as we do that, both of us are going to have a brilliant career, are going to keep having a brilliant career, I guess. Both of us. Desmond, thank you for your time, for your answers, and for all of that. And love hearing from you. And I'm going to get you back on this podcast, I guess. So thank you and goodbye to everyone out there.
Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much good and what an honor this was, man. Thank you so much.
Das war
Nullhocheins, der Musik- und Kulturbusiness-Podcast.
We had a great time talking, and we agreed that this is not going to be the last time that Desmond Myers appears on this podcast. All of the links that we talked about are in the show notes. Lots of love goes out to all the English-speaking listeners out there, and although most of this podcast is in German, I have a Scotsman and another American down the line. Take care and goodbye.